Yes, I think that's just recording now. Um, yeah, so I think it's fair to say that you put a lot of effort in yourself as a player um, to improve. It seems like 2 minutes ago that I was watching you at Dev Cup, and now you're the Doug. Um, so yeah, I wanted to ask how important do you think it is for players to look to improve themselves outside of training, or how much do you think should be included in the club training?
Um, from a volunteer's perspective, it's hugely down to the individual. If the individual wants to be really, really effective, thank you. If the individual really wants to be effective, they will they will invest that time and that thought into the sport. If not, it then adds more pressure onto the development team, or like the coaching team, to then go, okay, how can we maximize what we're doing at training? How can we make training as purposeful as possible? So an example of what we're doing at the moment in training is we're starting off the start of the season by working on really simple stuff to a mundane degree, so that when we can start doing things that are actually going to impact the player, when we start doing things that are going to impact the team from a player perspective, I'm not wasting my time running a drill on, I don't know, like 2-2, attacking 2-2. And we can't attack 2-2 in the way we want to attack 2-2 because we can't pass the ball. So first of all, as a coach, maximizing the time I have in a training session is really important. So identifying what is the game in its most fundamental, what are the most fundamental skills of the game, work those so you can then advance. So the best teams in rugby, all they do is the basics better than anyone else. They won't necessarily do flash things. The only time you really see teams do flash things is when they're confident that they're good enough to do it against a team that isn't as good as them, which is really bizarre. Most of like the meta stuff is really sort of micro tactics. Like, what are we going to do around the breakdown? What are we going to do about closing down space? Are we going to have possession, or are we going to attack the space? Are we going to kick the territory? They're not huge things. So like Quidditch, the introduction of bludgers makes Quidditch slightly different, because it does add that extra layer. But ultimately, is a beat hit or missed? Is a throw successful or not? Can a player know basic ideas of what space is, and can they run? If you have a team that can do that confidently and if you have a team that can do that competently, or at the very least will do it when they're told to do it, you've got at the very least a second tier team. They don't have to be anything special, but if they can do the basics well, they're going to hit second tier.
And then whose responsibility do you think it is on getting the basics to a competent level? It's both the coaching team and the player, but where would you say on the spectrum should players be looking to do that more for themselves, or should that be something that players can expect?
So, yeah, completely, a player should go off and do those things for themselves. Every player should take responsibility for their own development, 100%. But a coach cannot expect, but a coach should never say that out loud. In the sense of, a player should never say that out loud. So I should never say it's my responsibility for, no, wait, I'll get this right. Hang on. So, yeah, a player's It's a player's responsibility 100% for their own development, but it's up to a coach to enable that. It's up to a coach to say, this is what we're working on. This is how we're working on it. Now go and work on it. If you don't have time to work on it, you're not going to get better. But if you do have time to work on it and you do what I've asked you to do, we will get better. Example again of what we're doing at the moment. So the first 6 weeks, I've been repeating the same thing. When you throw, this is what I want you to do. Touch the hoop, touch the hoop, touch the hoop. Every week, every pass, touch the hoop. I'm saying to chasers and beaters. I've put it up on the Unspeakable's Tactics page. So players can go away and take responsibility for their own gameplay, but they have the means to do it effectively. If a player doesn't know how they can be improving, that's the coach's fault.
Yep.
So a coach's job is to give them the means to improve. A player's job is to see how much they can improve.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. So then putting on your player's hat, because obviously you've had quite a meteoric rise in quite a short space of time. So if we dial back 2 years ago, Doug, what kind of stuff were you doing to get yourself from Dev Cup to training squad? Because I think it's clear to everyone on the team, whenever we're training or whenever before in between games at a tournament, you're always you, like Alberto, you're always doing everything you can to improve, and you're doing drills on your own, just in a corner. Like, what kind of things did you start doing, and
So
has that changed now?
there was a few things that I did, but I did them in sort of a progressive order. I'll try and get them in the right order and remember where I am. So I started off by just trying to learn the game, but learn the game not by what the rules were, but learn the game by what can I get away with, and but not in like how can I break the rules, but how can I get what I want. And by asking myself, how can I get what I want? I started asking myself subsequent questions, which ended up being the right question. So when you're learning a game or when you're analyzing a game, asking yourself the right questions can go a long way to improving yourself. So after I play a game, I would then spend, after I play a game, a competition, a training, I'd spend the week like just randomly in the shower, go on my way to the shop, whatever, thinking about certain scenarios that had gone good, bad, indifferent, or certain points in a match. I was like, that like, not sure I got what I wanted, or I got what I wanted, but how could I get more? And I go over the scenario and I think, right, what was the scenario? What did I do? What could I have done differently? If I'd done something different, what would the outcome have been instead? And learning when to do something, I already had enough of a fundamental physical base to not have to learn how to tackle, how to throw, how to be confident on a pitch, how to read a pitch, how to read a player per se, but more, how can I use what I have to manipulate the opposition? So with beating, learning what the success criteria are of any given situation is the most important thing as a beater. When you're a chaser, if your team scores, you win. Like that's a success. Even if you fumbled a ball, even if you botched the pass, it doesn't matter. You scored. As a beater, that doesn't happen because your team can score, but you could have still done better. You could have still been more clinical. You could have still done something differently. You could have expended less energy. There's always something better that could have gone. So learning the success criteria was the first thing I did. So Yeah, so going through the game, what's the success criteria for this? How do I improve this? What could I have done differently? So when I'm in that scenario again, I already have a bank of options of things that I could do. The next thing I worked on was my reaction time. Was my list of reactions. When I went to Dev Cup, my default reaction was block. I'd had a conversation with Bong, the only time I'd ever met him, and he spent 5 minutes with me and said, "Your play style is blocking." I was like, "Really?" I was like, "Yep, you're very good at blocking. That's one of your strengths." So I went to Dev Cup in my mind, going, "Right, I'm good at blocking. Let's use that." So I was confident with having people throw at me. I blocked a lot. If you watch the games, like the entire time, the bludger's in front of me and I'm hiding behind it, like trying to deflect all the bludgers. And it went all right. But gradually you learn as a beta that if you block all the time and you start playing against higher tier teams, they're going to read that and they're going to play around you. So one of the next things I started working on was when I walk up to a beta or in any scenario, what am I going to do? Am I going to jump, dodge, duck, throw back, ignore them, beat the quaffle carry instead of the beta? What am I going to do? And I would often decide that before I've even got the bludger. Like I've just decided next time I confront a player, this is what I'm going to do. And then I gradually worked at training and like mostly against Drummond, which was really painful, but still. The nice thing about Drummond is when you make a mistake, like he makes sure you know you've made a mistake because you feel it. But I gradually decided to try and decide later and later and later until it's to a point where 1 in 3, 2 in 3 times I confront a beta, it's an instinctive reaction. 1 in 3, 2 in 3, I've roughly decided what I'm going to do based on reading the field.
And so
like that gradual development.
So if you had advice for someone looking to improve, because that's basically the reason I'm doing this, how would you go about training that instinct and the reaction time? It seems like an intangible thing that only comes with experience. Like, do you think there are any drills or way to try to?
One of the things we do is so all of my beaters start every session the same. The first thing we do is we start building up the throwing arm, and we go from 20% to about 70% throws. And we build up the throwing mechanic. Then we go into catching circle. So it's 6 throws, 6 catches. And we catch with a basket technique that I've been working on with the beaters and developing to try and go, okay, like one of the things we've figured out as beaters is once you've got the ball, with a quaffle, if you catch the ball, you've got to get it gone quick. So you need to take both hands off. But with a bludger, you haven't got to throw the ball quickly. You've just got to be able to move quickly. So this is why we don't take our hand off the bludger. So we do 6 catches with this particular catching technique. One's with 2 hands, one with 1 arm, one with the other arm, one above the head. One we have our back to the person throwing. They'll shout go, we turn, and then we catch a throw. And as we progress down through the months, we make that shout of go later and later and later. And then the last one is someone's running in an arc around the thrower, they'll throw and they've got to catch. So the reason for that is we're just getting used to different types of catches, different types of mechanics, different types of responses. Then from that, we go into firing line. What the firing line is, we have 6 beaters, 4 beaters, 3 beaters, whatever. We have multiple bludgers being thrown at one person, one after the other. They have to catch, release, catch, release. Now, not all of those throws are going to hit them. So they have to read, can I duck that? Can I dodge that? Can I catch that? And as the more confident they get with throwing, the more variable we make the throws. And we build that bank of reflexes so they're not having to think about catching it, they just do it. And we do the same with these decisions. The later we can leave, the more reps we can get in, the more it's reflex, the more we give, we're providing spatial awareness of their own body. So like what was like NASA astronauts do copious amounts of hanging sit-ups because it gives themselves a better sense of spatial awareness in a distorted view. So when they go into space, they can better cope with blood flying around everywhere.
Never heard of that.
Like it's a variation of like that sort of mindset of I'm going to throw balls around your head so you know when it is and when it isn't going to hit you. We condition that. We condition those reflexes, and then how you choose to approach that scenario in a game is informed by your thought process in game-based scenarios. So we play 3-on-3 and with 6 bludgers, and that breaks down, that gives us a game-like environment, but it's a lot more chaos. So you've got to be hyper aware. You've got to be looking more. You've got to be reading more. There's more people to communicate with you, and by repeating that, it can become quite a long game. So we work on the reflexes there as well. We work on the decision making there as well, and we can then give people priorities. Okay, in this round, I want you to look at if you're going to get beat in this part of the pitch, throw back. If you're going to get beat in that part of the pitch, you need to press and attack. If you see someone beat, you need to, in this part of the pitch, you need to wrap around and hit them. And we create the we create the when scenario, when to do something. When is it advantageous to like reduce that huge list of things you have to the fewest number possible? And we do that by learning the game and learning the scenario and providing reflexes. So if you've reduced it down to the fewest number of things possible from experience, that's like we're not actually choosing from 20 things, we're choosing from 1, 2, or 3. So once we've got the reflexes in, so you don't have to think about the actual action of doing it, you only have to think of what's best, you've got more time to read the pitch. So the next thing I did after I worked on these reflexes was I didn't complain when I was put on against Raptors, LQC and Werewolves, which sounds like a really silly thing, but like a lot of people don't enjoy those games, especially when they're playing for a team that isn't competing at that level. I'm pretty sure we got like all but destroyed in most of those games.
Yeah, I remember.
But I loved those games. I found them brilliant. And the reason for that was every time, like I was mercilessly shown all of my flaws. Mercilessly every game. And I was shown more areas where I could go away and think, right, in that scenario, what happened? Why did I lose that scenario? Why did I get beat behind? Someone beat my back. How did they beat my back? I wasn't looking at them. Why was I not looking at them? I didn't think that was I didn't think that was somewhere someone would be. Well, now you should. I didn't think where they were stood was impactful in the game. I didn't think it would impact me or anyone else. Turns out it did. And I learned what it was I needed to be doing whenever. It forced that pitch awareness. It gave me like a much heightened sense of pitch awareness because I'm being punished. I'm being punished all of the time. I'm being pressured all of the time. And then like it was very much so a baptism of fire that first season like for me, where I've got next to no experience and I'm being put on against people who have far more experience than me, and I'm just getting caught blindsided. But I made sure every time I got caught blindsided, I would then go away and spend at least an hour on every time I was blindsided, thinking about, why didn't I see that coming? What could I have done differently? Could I turn that into my advantage? So an example, like, so Bateman loves a good face beat. When I'm on defense, my team hasn't got control. It got to a point where I would happily let Bateman bounce a ball off my head. He got a smile out of it, thinking, "Oh, what I've done is really good." But I get a smile out of it as well, because this bludger has bounced off of the pitch. He's now out of the game. I can touch back in and go and deal with the other beater. So for me as a beater, like learning the game was huge. Generating what those success criteria was a huge part of it. It was something I was always working on, and I'm still working on, learning how can I maximize the advantage.
Just to go off on a tangent on that last point. So now we're not really the team we were when we were getting destroyed by the big teams like Wales. Pays attention now, and like you see, have taken a few L's. Do you think that now that a lot of our games where we are the better team, how much value do you think there is for the better team to be playing these weaker teams?
The better team to be playing the better teams.
The weaker teams. So in the past, it was Raptors who were killing us.
So
now
it hugely depends on the mindset. So there's like, so from a teaching perspective, if I put children in ability groupings, I've got smart kids who will push each other and they'll get really smart. And I've got kids who need a bit more attention, and I as a teacher can go to those kids and support them all at once. But those kids on that table never get exposed to the higher level stuff. They never sat next to the children who, for some reason, it just clicks for them. They're never involved in conversations that can stimulate them more. Whereas if I have mixed ability groups, it's more work for me, but to get round to everyone. But at the same time, everyone works together and it pushes them up together. So one table can have a thorough mix of conversations and ideas, and children adjust. So I get a higher average output from the class, but the children at the very top won't necessarily be pushed as high. So the perception then comes down to, why do we still do mixed ability groups? Because it's like there are children who aren't developing as well. And it goes down to why we've now changed how we approach learning. And if a child finishes their work in a class, in a lesson, I don't give them tomorrow's lesson. I give them more complicated things about the lesson we've done. So with Quidditch, it's important to have these to have the third tier teams, second tier teams playing teams in tiers above, because it gives them something to be going, okay, this is where I could be, this is where I should be, these are our gaps, these are our flaws. So OUQC and Unspeakable and Unbreakables at Dev Cup, they're coming off of that going, we feel really good about ourselves, we've just destroyed we've just smashed Dev Cup. But then when they go away, do they know, did they spot all of the mistakes they can fix? Or do they all feel like they're all good enough and that's fine? Playing those higher teams then shows you the gaps that you can fill, the areas you can work. It gives you that higher average. It gives you that ability to move into it. If you let those higher teams play intermittently with those lower teams,
So do you see any benefit for the higher teams or is it more that
Benefit for the higher teams
yeah,
is how well have you learnt what you've been doing? So, like I said earlier with the example of rugby, is rugby teams only really work on only really do their flashy shit against not so good teams. So if those higher tier teams want some competition experience and opportunities to test out new tactics, new styles, different things, they can. And they have that clear incentive to do that, rather than going, we're going to do what we do every game, we're going to run through, we're going to kill everyone, and we're going to score. Well, why? You know it works against LQC. Why would you bother doing it against Unbreakables? Like, why? Like, what's the point? Do something new, do something different. This is your incentive. Your incentive is to try different things. And if it doesn't work, grow up enough to know that it's okay to concede a few goals against a lesser team when you didn't concede any goals against a better team, because you're experimenting, you're trying something new. You also have a good opportunity to test out new link ups, new lines, bloods, new players, see how they go. Like huge incentives to experiment and push forward what Quidditch can be. Try it out in a small example and then expand it bigger. Whereas when big teams only play big teams, you're going to go tried and true, tried and tested, let's go. And the only way you're going to get any form of actual experimentation is out of desperation. And that's really rare. Like it's
yeah, no, I totally agree, because the stakes are
and
so much
like
higher.
it's rare because you're, even if it works, it might not look like it works. Whereas the same with a lesser team, if you do something that works for a lesser team, you might go, oh, I'm not sure, will it work against a third? Will it work against a big team? Well, try it out, test it out. Okay, I've got some confidence with it. We've got some of the kinks and some of the bugs. Now, when I get desperate, I have a solid platform to then build off of and expand from. So from a player's perspective, there's not always a lot of benefit playing against a lower team. But from a club perspective, there's huge incentive. From my perspective as a coach, when I'm playing against players who are in those lower tiers compared to sort of where I feel I'm at, I will be talking to them during the game. I'll almost be coaching them in the game, sort of having a chat like that was a good decision, or you see how I'm stood. What do you think I'm going to do next? Or that was a good throw, but maybe you should have hit this player instead. Or like I'll be almost coaching these players through the game to try and develop their own playing style, and that's what and me doing that to them will then make them better players. When they go away and they work on what we've discussed in the game, first of all, I've built that connection with them. So we might go, I might meet up with them later and we might do some coaching. I've made a new friend. Also, they might come to training. We might then work on some more stuff. Next time you play, I'm going to get a better game. I'm going to be playing better opposition. I'm going to be challenged more. And by increasing that base level pot of players, you then benefit the whole sport. So there's loads of incentives to do it, but there's huge risk of overdoing it. And if you overdo it, you will lose players. If if a club turns up, if a first tier team turns up to a third tier or second tier team and say, we're going to play you, steamrollers them, doesn't consider how they can go about benefiting themselves as a club, as a player, as a person in the long term, they're going to lose out hugely.
Yeah, and I think that is one of the benefits of in the UK, the community university split. So at the start, I was very skeptical, and I spoke to a few people about what I thought were the flaws. But then I think a week later, I was at Dev Cup, and just seeing it in person, the level between the higher tier teams and the lower tier teams, I just realized that it was the right decision to make a break.
Yeah.
As much as you can learn the tactical side from higher level teams, and you can go and you can think about that, there is a huge gap in the physical ability between the top tier players and the lower tier players, and that is something
There's
that
a
is
huge
going
gap in motivation.
yeah, yeah,
It's huge. You've got players who turn up to Quidditch because it's called Quidditch, and you've got players who turn up to Quidditch and don't call it Quidditch because they're there to play a competitive game.
yeah,
And they're two completely different groups. In an ideal world, we'd split. We wouldn't have a university community split. We'd have a Cape sport person split, where like genuinely, because I'm pretty sure we'd find that would be a much more even split
yeah,
of people who like are just there just to geek out, have fun, enjoy themselves, and maybe get a bit of competitive fun. And then you've got people who are like, no, I'm here to compete. I'm here to play. I'm here to do this. Don't talk to me about Harry Potter. Let's just get on with this shit. And that difference in mindset, whilst both are perfectly valid, the difference in mindset means no matter where you start from, only one of those mindsets are going to get significantly better. Because only one of those mindsets are going to go away and go, I'm going to work on this. I'm going to try this. I'm going to try and get better, try and improve.
Mm. And that's basically in a nutshell the reason that I've been trying to put together this program, because for the people who do want to improve the physical aspect of the game, and they have that drive, what I've found, what a lot of people are saying, is that they don't have the information or they don't really know what to do to improve themselves, but they have that motivation. And I find that that's the only real key factor. It doesn't matter how fast you are, how strong you are. It's having that motivation that's going to help you to improve and get to the next level. So that's why I've taken a bit too long, but that's why I've been trying to put it together.
You want to do it right.
And then, so what would you say? So if we're talking just on a physical level now, not the tactical aspects of the game, what would you say the key attributes for a top level Quidditch player, or what do you think a high level Quidditch player should be able to do physically?
So it fluctuates. As a chaser needs to be strong. They need to be powerful. They need to be explosive. They need to be physically confident in their own strength. Needing to be able to, like, so I can take a hit. I'm confident with with my competence level. So particularly light and nippy chasers will get the odd piece of input here and there, but ultimately, can I throw firm? Can I tackle firm? Can I move to where I need to in a short space of time and then sub off if I'm tired? So cardio isn't huge, but maybe having a reasonable 800-meter time would be quite good, I would say. So like if you got like a an 800-meter runner who is relatively strong, like relatively sturdy, does explosive based work, that would be really effective for a chaser. I would also then say for a chaser, okay, are you able to make good, is your card, I then want to look at their baseline cardio and say, can you do what I'm asking you to do and still make a good decision? If your cardio isn't like, so if you haven't got like a sufficient sort of VO2 max sort of, I would be concerned, as I'm not convinced enough oxygen is getting to your body for you to be able to make informed decisions once you get there. It's all very well being explosive to make a tackle. It's all very well you sprinting to get into position, but if you then can't think once you're there, you're of no use to me. So cardio above strength to a point, and then strength takes over hugely. For a beta, it depends on phase play. So cardio has gotten me quite far, but I also have, I don't have a terrible baseline strength.
You can blow your own. You can blow your own horn, Doug. It's okay.
But like more specifically, growing up playing rugby, I don't have to be as strong as other players because I have sort of my own sort of body confidence around contact. So I'm not afraid to get hit by someone. I think the only person I'm actively scared of getting tackled by is Farmer. Anyone else, I mean, actually in you, but mainly because you're not soft. So like every time you go to tackle me, like I get a firm, hard part of your body hits a part of my body that has no padding, and I get a huge bruise. So I've got one on my calf at the moment from last weekend. Like getting tackled by you, you're just not soft. But other than that, it's fine. Farmer's just really strong. So I don't think I'd want to get tackled by Farmer. Aside from that, I'm pretty comfortable. So my speed and my nimbleness and my cardio has gotten me out of a lot of got me out of a lot of situations. There's not a lot of contact in beating, so I don't have to be as strong. The only thing I realistically need is a strong arm, a strong shoulder. So strengthening my shoulder is the only big part of my body that I need to develop. Aside from that, I'm pretty happy with going mainly cardio. Graham's a good example. He's not a big guy at all. The man is pure cardio, but he can play to a very high level because his cardio is to a point where he can trot about the pitch all day long and he's not tired. He can still make good decisions. Beaters are always making decisions. They're always analysing. They're always reading the game. They're always seeing what more can be done. And it's not until this season that I've turned around and said to myself, right, okay, we're going to have to change our approach. I've played against most of what this country has to offer in terms of players. My cardio is enough to go, it's gotten me to training squad, fine. But if I want to sort of start playing against people like Bill, every time I come across Bill, he's too experienced. Every decision I make, he knew that response years ago. So I've got to make up for that. And I make up for that by being physical. But I can't be physical. So now I need to start developing my tackling strength. I need to start developing my holding strength. Can I keep him at arm's reach for long enough? I've only got to be able to be strong enough to keep him at arm's reach for 5 seconds, 10 seconds, and then I can do what I need to do. But I need to have that strength to now overpower him because I can't outthink him. So for a beta, cardio is a lot more important to me. I value cardio in a beta a lot more than the explosive output, because I can be playing a game, I can get beat. Like I can let a player beat me, and I can win that scenario. Whereas chasing is very much so overpowered, gets over the line, stop them no matter what. Whereas with the beta, it doesn't matter if they stop me or not. It doesn't matter, because I would have already worked a way around that. There's only two players. We work as a pair. There's only so many outcomes that being physical can get me. So being healthy enough to make those decisions time after time, sub off, make those decisions time after time. The only player, as a result, that there's only sort of like a couple of players I'd be actively concerned about in terms of my own strength, and that is Bill, that is maybe Jacopo, just because they're stronger than me. But I find ways around that because I'm able to make those decisions. I've got enough oxygen going to my brain. I'm not sort of taking away from my ability to think. So
I also find that in the beta game, because there is generally a lot less contact, the players that do overtly and regularly use contact to their advantage, so kind of like Lewis Boast and Anja in the UK, it kind of changes the dimension of the game. So what
usually
yeah, so what would be kind of a 50-50 scenario? So for example, I used to see Lewis Boast do it all the time. He would go into a situation where he didn't have control, and he would go in, he would take out the player, he would get beat in the process, but because of the impact of his physicality, he would also take out the other player for those 2-3 seconds while they're both on the floor, or what have you, and then that just changed the dynamic from what it would usually be in, if, for example,
so those beaters are a tactical decision rather than a balance. So we have a Drummond. If you're not making headway, okay, let's bruise them up a bit. Let's put someone on that changes the dynamic of the game. If you go exclusively, if you have a beta lineup that is exclusively heavy hitters, we will just outrun you. We will, like, that's fine. We'll slow the game down. We'll keep throwing back to hoops. You can't tackle me if I haven't got a bludger. We'll sit back. We'll just outrun you, like completely. We will keep, when we're attacking or when we're trading, we will keep you at a range that we are happy with, and we will choose when we engage. It's the advantage of being a beta. So, like, yeah, when we attack, we'll keep you at range, and when we choose to attack, then we will attack, and it will be on our terms. If we're defending, we've got a problem because you're now dictating when that happens. But I can change that dynamic quite easily. I can turn around and go, actually, I'm going to throw early, so you can't hit me. Or I'm going to sit back slightly closer to my beat so I've got a bit more cover. Or I'm going to throw back when I think you get near towards my partner, or I'm going to pass the ball to my partner as you come to hit me. That's now a foul. Or I'm going to turn my back and reposition myself. Or I'm going to run a pivot and I'm going to absorb that pressure. My partner's going to come and sweep up after me. There's loads of ways to get around a napalm. There's loads of ways to get around a physical beta. If you get isolated, that's a problem. Yes, but it's a tactical problem. It's not a physicality problem. So in terms of powerful betas, they're great. Having them is fantastic. But they're a tactical choice. They're not a necessity. So 50-50, I would put it ideally 70-30. And I think that's being a bit generous to the powerful players. But yeah, around about 70-30 for me. Like, I would put cardio down for a beta quite highly. But if you have a beta who can make decisions under duress after a long period of time, if you have a beta who is strong and can find ways of making up for that shortfall in cardio, you've got a really good beater.
Yeah,
Bill being the best, like Bill is the best, and that's it's arguable, but not really. He's a very strong man, and whilst I might think that it's fine, I'll just run around him, I'll confront him when I choose. It's no. If I haven't got if he has control, there is nothing I can do. I cannot get that bludger off of him. And then when you pair him with Lucy, Lucy's cardio more than makes up for any perceived difference that Bill may have. So by having one cardio and one power play, and they can both make those decisions. Again, it ultimately comes down to decision making, and how you apply those skills. It becomes very difficult, like really difficult. But yeah, like for me, I've gotten to a point where cardio, okay, this has gotten me this far, but I can't get that last 10%. So I'm going to have to start increasing my strength. So I'm now going to the gym. I'm trying to increase my strength. I'm trying to increase how much I can do, because it's the only way I'm going to be able to get the ball off of Bill. And if I can't get the ball off of Bill, I can't be better than Bill. I can't compete on the same level as him.
Yeah, I think Bill's a really good example. So it's something I think I chatted to maybe Mariana about, was to just imagine if we had the community as it was now, but they were all on a higher athletic level. As in, so if you could take the mind of a certain person and also give them the physical ability that they might need to be able to carry off the things they're thinking about, how different Bill kind of encapsulates that, because he has the tactical side and he also has the physical ability to pull off pretty much whatever he wants to do.
So a good example of what we would want is Mikey Orridge, Louis from Dodos, and Leon Burgess. They're all very young. They're all very young, athletic. They're not the strongest people, but they're really quite strong. But they're springy, they're quick, they've got fast reactions, they're athletic, they can run for days. And that combination of being pretty strong, but incredibly athletic and incredibly healthy, gives them so much more of an advantage over people they play. And I think I feel like they're sort of like a staple example, because you then have everyone else. It's like Jan, you've got like his mind is second to none. You've got Bill, who's very smart and very strong, and he's smart with that strength. You've got Alex Carpenter, who is ridiculously quick. They all use that skill to their advantage. But the common theme with the successful beaters is how much cardio they have.
Well, as in on a scale.
Yeah, it would be more of like a inverted U, but with like more of like a positive trend. So the peak being further to the right. But like the theme is cardio. The theme is I can be on the pitch for longer, so I can get more experience, so I can so I can learn more scenarios, so I can get more decision making. And then once they get to a point where they've got that experience, they've had the game time, they've had the development, they can then go away and go, right, now I'm going to work on my strength, because I don't need to be as healthy anymore, because I've had the game time, I've got established, I've got the pitch experience, the scenario specific experience I have. Now I can go away and work on my strength, and I can go away and become a Bill.
I do on that point though. I do think that's one of the flaws of how 99% of teams operate their subs management. So in terms of, you have a star player and you try to keep them on pitch for as long as you can, and it gets to the point where they do start to get tired, they start to deteriorate and make sloppy decisions, even if they're the fittest person in the world. Whereas it may be more beneficial to cycle the subs more often, because we have that benefit in Quidditch, that we can do that. And then not only are you giving them more time where they are at that 100% level, rather than maybe they've lost a fatigued 20%. Not only that for the star player, but you're also giving more time and experience to the second that person's substitute, or even the third tier player. And then so like everybody gets the chance to, kind of like what you were saying with the children on the top table and the less good table.
So I agree with you completely. So when I joined, I asked everybody who would listen to me at the time, which wasn't many people, mainly because Monique was too busy swearing at me, which is always fun and motivating. But I said, how can I get better? What can I do to improve? And I got the same answer from almost everyone. You just need to play more games. Okay, how can I play more games? You need to go to fantasy tournaments. Fantasy tournaments. Go to more tournaments. So, okay, cool. Because in a season, let's go pre-split, you've got Southern. If you don't qualify for Southern, you're going to Dev Cup. So you're going to have to go the long way round. Or you've got to fight to qualify, and you've got to fight to get as good seeding as you can to make BQC as easy as possible, as simple as possible, as straightforward as possible. So every game is quite an important game. So are you going to risk blooding players in games where you're not convinced they're going to fare very well? You've got no incentive to. So okay, cool. So we qualified for BQC, great. Or you then turn up to BQC, you're like, right, we're fighting. Like, we're fighting against some great teams, we're fighting against some not great teams, but like every win is important. As we see with the need for Dev Cup, to keep players, your team's got to win. Ultimately, you've got to win at least a game to be able to go, yeah, we had fun. Not all teams are like that, but I'm pretty sure teams that will say, "Oh no, that's not true." If they go to a tournament and they win every game, they'll be turning around saying, "Actually, that was a bit more fun." It gives you that self-validation, that feeling of self-validation. Everyone loves that. Sure, great. So they're going to turn up to BQC and they're going to go, "We need to win. We need to win. We need to win." So they'll do again everything in their power to win. So they won't put on their third, fourth, fifth string player in that given scenario just to see what happens. They'll give it to their experienced player to hold down the fort, to keep things where they are, to hold back the floodgates of goals that are going to come if we sub them off. So like Highlander, Glasgow, when they had David Banas, he subbed off and they went from being in swim against Liverpool, which they had no right to do with that squad. He subbed off and it all went to shit because he was the one holding back the floodgates. So you take him off, you start having a lot less fun.
I would say that also comes down to, again, to the way Quidditch is set up, because it's basically, in the UK anyway, it's a one season deal. Basically, you have your season. Next season, everything can change, especially in the University League. You could lose.
No such thing as a building year.
Yeah, you could lose a third of your players, so there's less incentive to develop the players who are still going to be there next year. And yeah,
For
and
sure.
I think that's a management decision that lots
A
of
year in
clubs
Quidditch
inherit.
is like 3 years in any other sport. And that's made evident by, we look at community white waves. So players who played 6 years ago, who were still playing from 6 years ago, 5 years ago, 4 years ago, 3 years ago, I have no idea who they are. We talk about them on fantasy drafts all the time. I don't know who they are. And for me, that feels like a decade ago. It's only 3 years, but it's just a completely separate thing. And it's just not something that's on my radar at all, because it feels so much longer. A year in Quidditch is a long time in the life cycle of this sport. It is a complete sort of it's like cat years. It just moves at a different time pace to everything else. So yeah, like it's hard to convince people to go, we're going to have a building year this year to see what happens.
Which I think is
But
a mistake.
oh, hugely! It's definitely a mistake. 100%. It is. It is definitely a mistake. Like, it's something that is needed. But what I was guessing at was, when you only have Southern, which qualifies you for EQC, Dev Cup, EQT, or BQC, you then have BQC. That's it. And then you've got like the 2 side tournaments, which are both really important to win. When you've only got 2 shots to get to where your team needs to be, you're not going to take as many risks. When you're, so like after the split, you've got fixture 1, 2 people promoted, 2 people relegated. If you're in Division 2, you're fucked. Only 1 team is staying where they are. And there's, where 2 teams go up, there's a huge incentive to play as well as you can to get into that fixture 1, to guarantee, worst case scenario, fixture 2, second seed going into BQC. Like, it's a huge incentive. So like teams in the second tier, teams in the first tier for definite, absolutely every team in the first and second tier are going to be putting out their first tier, their first starting 6. They're probably not going to be making too many subs, and it's just going to be a grind. Just throw in, like, I don't care if you're tired, get back out there, meat grinder shit. Because like there's no incentive to experiment, to branch out. It's only two rounds. There's more rounds, so you can get a good average, or there's less. You must do well. You must do well. You must do well at these national tournaments. You're going to get a lot more variability. A lot more variability.
Mm. But then again, that is really the nature of competitive sport. So yeah, while it may be a problem in Quidditch, it's something that most people that have been playing sport are somewhat used to, even if we don't have the same problems of the starting 6 playing 17 minutes basically.
I hear your point, but to anyone who said that, I would say, just because you're used to it doesn't mean it should happen.
Yeah, exactly.
Like it's the duty of every person to make sure what comes after you is better than what came before. That's not just true. That's not just true in sport. It's true in life. Like every parenting generation complains about the next generation, saying, "Oh, you're too." Like, back in my day, we could say whatever the fuck we want. It's like, well, yeah, you could, but you shouldn't have. And their response is, but we fought for this and we stood up for that. It's like, well, yes, you did. That was really progressive of you, and we've taken that and we've gone forward even more. And we're making this place better. Every generation, it's their responsibility to make sure the next generation is even more inclusive. And we shouldn't whine about that. We shouldn't complain about that. Same in sport. Just because no team has gone right consciously and publicly, we're going to have a building year, doesn't mean that shouldn't happen. So Olympians are doing a fantastic job by putting, so we have Dev Cup at the end of the year, but they have Odyssey Cup at the start of the year. So teams get that early incentivization, they get that early blooding, they get that early competition experience. Let's try things, let's do new things, let's do something different as much as possible. Ultimately, when we do that though, more people win when we let more people have a go than lose. The only people who lose is that starting six. So maybe we have
what I'm saying is
a...
What I'm saying is that's not even a loss, because that starting six will be given the time they need off pitch to recover and be able to play at that top level. So they're not having to dredge out at 70% and make bad decisions and do a disservice to them, to not only
Look at what
themselves.
QPL would have been this year. Look at what QPL would have been this year. No international players because they're all away at World Cup. Well, a fraction of the international players because they're all away at World Cup. So you've got all of these new players stepping up, coming in, competing on a higher level with a better infrastructure, with a better sharing of coaches and ideas to play Quidditch. This QPL could have been one of the best yet. Just because all of the starting lineups of the top teams in the UK have fucked off.
I think it would definitely have been a different experience. But yeah, I also think it would have acted more as a kind of like a development tournament, if you will. Kind of like...
Oh no, it would. It would,
not,
for sure.
Not to the extent that Freshers' Cup or Christmas Cup or whatever was. But yeah, just giving the players that weren't potentially first stringers that chance of the limelight and making those decisions in game, being the ones to control and just get that experience. So yeah, I'm not sure
Valentine's
what's
Cup and Potato Cup.
Pardon?
Being at the Valentine's Cup and Potato Cup were at the same time as QUK trainings.
Yeah.
Starting sixes all get their training, all get their development. Everyone else can go and play Quidditch.
Yeah,
They don't get in the way.
It was good this year. Like I was a bit disappointed that I couldn't draft the superstars for my team, but I was so happy with not only how my team performed, but like the whole standard across the weekend was really good, and seeing players that you hadn't really maybe seen but hadn't paid that much attention to, and you got to see what they could do. I think Valentine's was after EQC was maybe my favorite tournament.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think I'll wrap up by asking you one last question. So we kind of touched on it before when you're talking about the 800-meter runner and rugby as well. But if you could take a body part from any sport you wanted to and put them together to make like your perfect Quidditch player from a physical sense, what would that look like?
I think someone like Trev or Callum Lake, maybe a bit shorter actually, have possibly the most optimal physiques possible for this sport. Because I think Farmer is just like, the man is just so strong. He's just too big. Like, it's too big a target. He can't, he's not as maneuverable laterally. Whereas someone like Trev has very quick feet. So I'd probably take the legs of Trev, the feet of Harry McClanahan,
especially
you
this
need
year.
that dexterity. Yeah, like you need the dexterity. Mind you, Trev's feet aren't too bad either.
Yeah.
I mean, like thinking about it, like actually, Sen embodies everything I would say is needed in a Quidditch player. Like I would just outright, just on a whim, say Sen. Like what I'm about to build here, like it is Sen. So you got like cardio from like a Mikey Orridge or a Graham. You've got work rate of Angie, like someone with the mental ability to push themselves. So, and the only time Angie sprints on a Quidditch pitch is after he's beat. Like the fastest he moves is after he's beat. There isn't a
He
single
gets his arms
person.
so high.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Like I challenge anyone to come up to come up to me and tell me that there is a beater that has a higher work rate than Angie after they're beat.
I don't know,
That's
our Max Fremantle. He's very
even
similar.
then. Even then, like so, I agree. He like he does the same thing, but even then, it's not the same level of work rate. With Angie and Max, they both know while you're on the pit, while you're not beat, you don't have like if you're sprinting somewhere, it's too late. Like you're like something has gone wrong for you to need to sprint like maximum. Like something has possibly gone wrong. Whereas if you are beat, you can be beat for the right reasons, but you're now of no use to anybody at all. So sprinting back, like work rate of Angie, 100%. Feet of Harry, legs of Trev, arms of Callum Lake, just like the huge wingspan, huge wingspan.
Does that include? So it's we're kind of making a flex utility player, but for the arms,
yeah.
also like taking into
Yeah,
account
so
power and
so the wingspan it's like for catching, but also for levers. You just got a huge lever to throw with. Like it just sort of makes sense to like have someone with a longer arm, just so they can get more power behind the ball. I'd say the hands of Farmer, just because I imagine they're very strong and very large as well. And the strength, the hand strength I found was quite important for me. Was my hands aren't the biggest, but I can still grip the ball pretty well. That's because I work on grip strength, and like when you're halfway through a game and you're like halfway through a game on day 2 of a tournament, you're like you just can't hold the ball anymore. Like it's just so tiring.
that's something.
Just standing there looking like you're being threatening.
Yeah, that's something I didn't really give beaters enough credit for until this year, until I started with the budget. Is the how much grip strength you do need to just consistently be. Maybe it's because I don't have the practice, but to consistently have it and to be throwing. Like after my first session, my hands and my forearms were absolutely burning.
Yeah, because unlike a chaser, like you don't necessarily have to, like you don't have the ball all the time. But like a beater, like you do. Like for a large part of the game, you're going to have a ball in your hand, and you've got to look like you're going to throw it. You have to look like you're going to throw it. So your forearms are activated for most of the game, and it's exhausting. Let's think. Yeah, I think we've covered a lot. Maybe I think I still rate Jan, or no. So Jan's decision. Jan's reading of a game and decision making of a game, but I want Alice's temperament. So her ability to calm players down on the pitch is unlike anything I've seen, and it gives her partner and herself and her team such clarity. It improves the quality of the decision making all the time. So I think, yeah. And maybe Phil's ability to drink. So and Phil's liver. We'll have Phil's liver as well.
That's probably the most important as an unspeakable.
You know it. You know it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
But yeah, like that yeah. That was another thing that I had to start working on while I was developing was grip strength as well, like hugely, like grip strength. That's one area that it like cardio isn't going to save your lack of strength if you can't hold the ball at all. So yeah, as a beta, building a foundation of strength, but not going over the top.
Yeah.
Would be the optimal. Whereas a chaser, you can go beyond the foundation of strength, and that be okay.
Yeah, that's something I'm hoping for our club and the community as a whole. Really, is just to see that baseline level